This house believes that climate change is a far bigger threat than COVID-19. Okay then, Elena, you go first.
Yes. So I have a few things that I would like to raise when it comes to. So I am actually my house believes that COVID-19 is not like a big threat. So the climate change is a bigger threat than COVID-19. So yeah. So I was thinking about how important is the has been the climate change in the last 50 years. So the interest for anything that has to do with sustainability um, was not always as it is today. Today, probably we are seeing like the biggest volume of people wanting to do something to help the environment, either if it's like for a business purpose or not. We see companies that are working towards like a greener future because it is a good business. And not only that, like we don't mind a business going to change their policies and regulations for a better purpose, even though they don't think like that. So I guess a lot of people would agree with me when it comes to the climate change being very important right now, but not as important as it should be after a 50-year time, for example. um, um, Having like something that to fight for, because like equality, for example, was and it is far more important than anything that has to do with our planet, which is ironic in a way, and um, I mean good in another way. So yes, my house believes that the climate change is a far more important um, problem, because COVID-19 is a result of what humanity has been doing for these amount of years on this planet. And um, the climate, like, I mean, if you don't have a fight for the climate change, then you don't have a planet, and you don't have COVID-19, and you don't have anything as such, because there is no future and there is no way to look and to fight for anything at all that has to do with the betterment of the future. So yes, in regards to that, I guess I introduced a little bit of what I want to say. And so, am I waiting for someone to come and say, no, that's not true, actually? Because you know what?
We're going to have somebody come and say, no, that's not true. But have you finished?
No, I have multiple things to
What happens is you give your speech, then the opposition, leader of the opposition gives their speech, then normally you'd have a seconder who talks for the motion, then a seconder who opposes it. We have these four people giving their point of view, and then the whole group can discuss it and debate it and ask questions.
That is perfect. So I am I would like to say something after the opposition says something.
Okay. All right. So Roxanne is now gonna.
I like to debate. Sorry.
Roxanne is now going to give her opinion. No?
Okay, so there have been lots of theories around COVID-19, and the truth is it is a health crisis. And I think it reminds us that biological weapons, unlike other threats, so the way I see it, COVID-19 is a human security threat. Is a massive one because it's a health crisis. and its impact on the health and well-being of the citizens. So the same way as climate change is a human threat. So the way the government have responded to this health threat, I think is very interesting, because there have been numerous materials prepared and proposed by, for example, the US Center for Disease Control, in relation to, they made recommendations in relation to a potential global pandemic. However, all the governments ignore that, and they focused on other issues that were more important in the agenda. And yeah, I think it's COVID-19 is a threat that you cannot see or control, and therefore is a threat that you can manage. Compared to that, climate change has been an issue in the agenda for a long time. And as Elena said, the climate change producing COVID-19, I don't see a relation between that. It is true that the industrialization and everything has led to a negative impact on climate change, but I don't think that produced COVID-19. In China, I have read that in China there is a focus on researching the COVID viruses. So obviously, if they are researching it, then there's going to be a threat. So I think that's why it has started on China, not because the industrialization levels are bigger in China than in other parts of the world. So I don't see any relation between climate change being one of the reasons that that COVID-19 appeared. It might be one of the reasons why it spread, but yeah. Elena?
Yes.
No, hold on,
Thank you so much.
Whoa, hold on.
I'm passing the ball.
Yeah.
What we're going to do now,
Yeah.
if possible, is have a second person speaking in favour of this motion. Somebody else, somebody different. So would one of the other people like to?
So if I may speak, let's say I'm gonna take Roxana's stand, right? With all due respect to Elena, obviously. The thing is, my opinion on the matter is that I don't agree that the COVID-19 has came out of, I would say, like climate change or vice versa, because obviously the climate change has already been like existing since a long time ago, and as far as my knowledge is capable to say that, I think that the COVID-19 has came like way later than the climate change, because obviously we have been witnessing some changes since a long time. I think that the COVID-19 has, at the contrary of like the opinions, contributed to enhance a little bit the climate itself and lower a little bit the impacts and like all the negative aspects that our Earth has been witnessing, because obviously, and I think like that's the logic, is that since we have been like in this virus, there has been a governmental lockdown that has been introduced like to almost all countries, and obviously because everyone is staying in their place and there's no activity, there's no like an economic activity, or there is like no industries, so there's less planes, less production, less manufacturing, less other fields, I would say. And even though right now when we are like seeing and going out, we see that there is like more a pure air, we can see far away from like in the sky, we can see like some stars that are emerging. So I would say that it has like advantages, but also it has disadvantages. But yes, I would say definitely that there is like still some efforts and still some progress that all of us need to do, like in their daily life to help the climate change going in a positive way. And yes, that was pretty much all.
Hey,
Mm-hmm.
very much.
So, in relation to what you said, Nadia, there has been a drop in the global gas emissions due to the sudden economic slow. And I've also read that China's CO2 emissions have dropped by a quarter compared to normal. And I'm not even talking about the international cooperation that has been obviously promoted because of the coronavirus. For example, China sending help to Italy shows the fact that countries are cooperating with each other and they are helping each other to overcome this crisis, which they are doing in the climate change sector, but I wouldn't say it's that well promoted.
Okay. So we now need somebody to oppose the motion. I've prepared a little speech. So since I'm the chair, I shouldn't give a speech because it's against the rules, but it doesn't matter.
Well, we would like to know your opinion about the matter. So,
well, in a debate, you don't necessarily give your opinion. You give, you speak on one side. It's like diplomacy. It's like
On one side, yeah.
You have to justify something that you don't always believe in. So the motion is that this House believes that climate change is a far bigger threat than COVID-19. The reason why I believe this motion is wrong is very simple, and it depends on the meaning of the word threat and the difference between threat and risk. Let me move this over here. So a threat is something that can cause us immediate harm. A man who is aiming a gun at us is a threat, whereas a risk is the potential for loss or damage that might or might not come at some time in the future. So allowing the sale of guns to the public is a risk, but it's not a direct threat. Selling guns doesn't actually kill anybody. It's what people do with the guns that's the harmful thing. So a threat is something that's immediate and causes us immediate danger. A risk is something that could possibly cause us danger in the future. So I admit that climate change presents a far greater risk than COVID-19. But that's not what the motion says. It says it's a far bigger threat. So perhaps in 30 or 50 or 100 years from now, the risks that climate change present will become real as seas rise and deserts replace fertile fields, tropical diseases move up into temperate latitudes, and millions of people die of starvation. That will almost certainly happen because I don't believe that governments have got the will or the public support to suspend the trillions of dollars that are necessary. I don't know if you've read the article that we wrote on the CovCan website, which shows that we need, just to replace the electricity supply, we need to, over the next 30 years, we need to spend $1 billion every day building a new nuclear power station. So over the next 30 years, that's $100 trillion. And when you think that the global economy is only 80 trillion, that's a huge amount of money. That's 4% of the global economy needs to be spent today and every day for the next 30 years just on replacing the electricity supply. That just is not going to happen. So, these risks that climate change presents are eventually going to become threats that start to kill people. But at the moment, they're not. This week, nobody's going to die from climate change, whereas hundreds or thousands of people could well die from COVID-19. And I think most people feel that there's no immediate threat from climate change. As I see it, on the other hand, COVID-19 presents three major threats. And remember, we're talking about threats, which climate change does not present. The first is that COVID-19 is, as I say, an immediate threat to our lives. Second one is that many people in poor countries who normally survive on the money they earn day by day are now in lockdown. They're threatened with starvation, and people are dying from starvation because they cannot go out to work, or because the people they normally work for have stopped their business. So this is happening now in Africa, in India, and I'm sure in other countries as well, probably South America, I'm not sure. Certainly, there is evidence that it's happening in those two countries. People are starving. And in Africa, African towns where people used to go out and steal electronic goods, now they're going out and stealing food because they're starving. So that's the second immediate threat from COVID-19. And the third threat is the financial threat. So individuals have got no income, businesses have got no income, and governments are borrowing huge amounts of money. So far, the governments of the world have pledged $8 trillion. So remember, the global GDP is 80 trillion. So they've pledged 1/10 of the global GDP, gross domestic product, to spend fighting COVID-19. So that they're going to have to pay that money back, and it's going to have to be paid back over the next few years. So that is a huge financial threat, and it's us, it's the people who work, who are going to have to eventually pay that back. So, to summarize my point of view, climate change is not threatening to kill anybody this week, nor threatening to starve them to death, nor threatening to incur huge debts, although it should be doing, whereas COVID-19 is threatening all these things. So I believe that climate change is a bigger risk, but COVID-19 is
a threat.
I believe that climate change is a bigger risk than COVID-19, but it is not a bigger threat. So I oppose the motion. So that's the introduction. So that's all the speeches done. Oh, so Will has joined the meeting. Okay.
I
Yes.
agree with Philip.
Well,
Climate.
I'm not paying her to say this.
Yeah, climate change is, I would call it a chronic problem. It's a long-term chronic problem. COVID-19 is acute, which we're fighting now. And I feel that, like you said, climate change is a long-term thing, and it's risky, but it's not threatening people right now. COVID-19 is threatening people. People are dying. People are dying either with the virus or they're dying because of poverty. So that's why I agree with you. Somebody else can say something now.
Yeah, I don't agree with that point, because people are dying with the floods. People are dying with the wildfires. People are dying from air pollution because of climate change. So I would say that, and actually the figures, I don't have the exact figures, but there's more people dying from climate change than from COVID-19. This is more reduced in time. There's more people in a smaller amount of time dying from COVID-19. So it feels more scary. But on the long term, I think climate change is is a bigger threat to humans because it can kill more people because it's got a wider range of of weapons with the wildfires, with the floods, with the tropical diseases, with other viruses like that might come up, with conflict that might arise between people, between nations. So that's my point.
Good. I mean, if nobody else wants to respond to that, I would just say that if you look back 100 years, they had a global influenza epidemic after the First World War that killed 50 million people.
Are we talking about the Spanish flu?
I don't know what, I can't remember what it was called. Yeah, probably.
No, you're talking about
Spanish flu.
no, that came later.
Yeah.
1919 was the worst, one of the worst epidemics. So, I mean, if we hadn't had this lockdown, we would have had probably millions of people dying.
Mm.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what the science says about the
Yeah,
numbers.
the Spanish flu, sorry. Sorry to interrupt.
That's all right. No, I finished.
Yeah, so what do you think about the way that the government is dealing with the COVID-19? Because I don't think that I think that it did put a lot of pressure on, I think, all of the governments, to be honest, on how to deal with this issue. And I think my question is, if they can't deal with the health crisis, how can they deal with the climate change crisis?
Mm.
Anybody got a response? I mean, personally, I think the governments around the world are dealing with it in the best way they know how, which is this lockdown situation. And that is the only thing they can do at the moment. Why don't you think they're dealing with it properly?
So I don't think they're doing it properly because there are still people outside.
They're what?
The people are still outside. So we're not on lockdown.
Well, you know, I mean, in China, people were indoors because if they went out, they were arrested and locked up.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that what you want?
That's just relinquishing your freedom.
That's gonna stop the problem. Then yeah, that's what I want.
Oh, okay. Well, go live in China then, because I want to.
You know, in Romania,
I'm gonna.
you know, in Romania, you can't go out without having the declaration that you sign every time you go out.
Well, and that's in France is the same, but you can go out, whereas in China they couldn't actually go out. If you want to have a proper lockdown, that's, you know, people are just not allowed out unless the government says okay. Anyway, in Britain we're a bit more libertarian. You haven't got used to our libertarian system here yet, where we prefer to have people comply by voluntarily rather than have documents and strict controls like that.
Yeah.
Well, this control and signing a paper every time you go out for necessities is not great for the environment, isn't it? It is absolutely awful.
It's not. It's true, but
Yeah, like every single time, like, oh look, I have the paper here with me, again and again and again. Now, I'm not talking about the gloves and the way that they are disposed and all the masks. And no, I'm not. I'm not gonna go there because otherwise I'm gonna cry.
Oh, wow.
yeah, but that's common sense, Elena. It's
Yeah, but
not
look,
something the government can work with. It's just
so
people being
yes, the government can work with that, providing education.
Yes,
And
right.
not okay, it's not gonna be shown right now. Okay, yeah, probably it is not a thing that should be implemented right now and it's gonna show results right now. But as people, and there have been so many studies to say the same thing in every field. If you are educated on one matter, you tend to make more responsible decisions, not for only yourself, but for the future generation. So looking in the future, because I wanted to kind of comment on what Philip said about threat or not threat right now. Yes, absolutely, probably COVID-19 is not like it is a threat right now, and the climate change has nothing to do with it, and they're like two different problems that we shouldn't look at in like in the same picture. But I guess it is. I'm not saying that COVID-19 is like started because of the damage of the climate change. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there has been a lot of information going on around this topic that I'm gonna come back on. But education is like essentially the thing that the governments can implement, and they have the authority to implement, to make people aware about their choice, everyday choice, exactly like someone said, I guess Nazi said. Yeah.
Okay.
Who?
Anyone else want to say something?
No one wants to be on the side of Elena. Okay. Wow. Wow.
yeah, obviously
Okay.
it's a very
It's actually pretty interesting to find out.
I've got some connection issues, so it was probably like got cutting off most of the times. But
Oh.
if maybe you could just like repeat just the headlines, so I can maybe just like back up what you said.
Yeah, sure.
So I
I
agree with Elena. Talked about education, that people getting educated in the issue is also important, and the government in general should invest more. Yeah, I think if we promote this sustainable mindset, as Elena likes to keep, I think if we teach children the sustainable way, then on a longer term, obviously we have more.
Exactly, more advantages.
We have people that are aware. I'm not saying that we have more chances, because you can educate a person, but you can't impose stuff to the person.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
you can't say that you're gonna have people. You're gonna have more awareness. It's true, and maybe this awareness is gonna later on transform into. It's gonna like make the people take action about it.
I agree with Roxana, because obviously and in general you can't just like change the behavior of someone that has already been living many years in his life, right? But what you can do, you can just introduce those all the sustainability or ecology matters like to kids when they're being introduced to the school, because I mean if they can be able to learn what are like the basics of life at the school when they're starting at 5 or 6, you may as well just like introduce another course about the sustainability in general. Just give them the core information, the core knowledge about how things are working, right? And just not putting it into like a chapter or two into biology or geography, because people, they are not really interested about that. But if you introduce that in like younger ages, as you will introduce English or mathematics, you may as well just introduce sustainability. And as long as they are growing up, and obviously they'll be like learning other information and other knowledge in different areas, maybe at one point they will be able to link the different dots between all the information that I have been learning in left and right, and then that would lead to a education which is more green between brackets. And I think like now we should be able just like to introduce that. Like, we can't change people's behavior now, because obviously whatever you try to sensitize people, basically to say, yeah, you need to put your trash like in the different places, or you need like to consume less water or less electricity, well, they say, yeah, well, I don't care because like I'm paying for it, and that's all. However, if you introduce,
and it's not affecting you directly.
Exactly. And because there is like the climate change itself, maybe we can't see it on the short run, because like the changes, like there are small changes that they are not apparent to the eye, and therefore like we can't see it live. However, it has like a big impact in a medium term or short run, so like 30, 35, 40 years. So I think that we should start to put that knowledge, raise awareness, the kids right now, and just make them, I don't know how I'm gonna say that, but just basically make them do the right actions at that moment. And if we start now, I think that we can only see the positive, because we can't fall that below. You know what I mean?
I do agree with you. I wanted to actually add something that is like very important. So I have been told many times that my perspectives are kind of like utopic, and so I'm thinking and I'm seeing the planet in another perspective, and could be that many people would say that this is kind of weird or not normal or unusual for their type of thinking, but I'm gonna say it anyway because, you know, YOLO. The purpose in life, you have to understand that this comes like from the deep within. So either is it, if it is coronavirus or any kind of virus in the future or in the past, because we had that in the past, why we didn't create like a risk management kind of assessment? Because there has been something like this going on in the past with our generation. So I'm coming back to the idea with what's the purpose, like what's the meaning of life? Because when you kind of start to grow up, you understand that, okay, so you know, normal is to have a family, normal is to have a house, normal is to have a car, normal is to have 1 kid, 2 kids, and that is to have a good job, stable job, and that is like all that it is. And I'm not saying you personally here within this conversation, but I'm saying that a lot of people, millions of people, are coming on this planet on this purpose only. We have to understand that this is more than creating a family here, because you create it now, and then for your children and your children's children, there's not going to be anything left here. So if you don't we don't change this perspective, the educational systems implemented in schools and everywhere to raise awareness of what can it be done for the future, because it's not only you here. This is not the meaning of life. the meaning of life is to be responsible, a responsible citizen, and to live, to take care of this planet, or like this universe, as you are here right now. This is a threat that's like, it's been happening for so long. Why don't we have like assessments as such? Why do you think the spread of the virus was so like so massive?
Or you can call
Sorry,
03456073333. And you can head over to BBC.
Sorry.
Okay, so I agree with Elena, because we have this perception, some of us, most of us, I would say, that it doesn't affect me. So why would I think about it?
Exactly.
And it's wrong. It's so wrong, because we don't think long. We don't think long term. We don't think up what's happening after we die. So we live for now, but we don't think of the consequences that are our action.
Footprints, yeah.
Yeah.
I think, Roxana, that's the key to this whole debate, isn't it? That we think about threats, and COVID-19 is a threat, but we don't think about the longer term risks. Because, I mean, I can understand it. Most people live from day to day.
Yeah.
You know, they've got to earn their money, they've got to bring their family up, they've got to do the shopping. And it's somebody else's job to think about the long term threats. And the only people who can do that is the government. And the government are limited to getting elected if there are elections. So they've only got a 5-year horizon. So thinking about climate change in 30 years, I mean, governments are saying good things about it. You know, the UK government says we're going to be carbon neutral by 2050. They talk a lot, but they're not investing the trillions of dollars that's needed to actually get there.
Yeah.
So it's all for, I think it's all talk. And the reason is that they would never be elected again. People people don't want to pay for all this, investment in the future. They want a comfortable life now. The comfortable life that we had until a month ago, they just want that back. Be able to go on holiday and do all this other stuff. And I think that's the main issue about climate change. How do we get people to take a long-term view? I don't know.
Is it alright if I said something?
Sure, please.
Just to add to what Elena, Roxana have been saying, and everyone been talking about educating the younger ones. The way I see things and the way I believe things are is that children learn from what they see you do. So if you're saying educating the children, they need to see you doing it. As like you mentioned, Phil, the government, they need to see the government taking those actions. Or the planes that were flying, you saw Greta Thunberg having a go at Donald Trump for flying, or all the politicians for flying in the air all the time, going on vacation and all that, and contributing to the carbon emission in the air and everything. The children need to see you taking those sustainable steps. They need to see these politicians, because back in Africa, when you talk to children, all they know is that they see the politicians living lavish lifestyles and living a very expensive lifestyle. And all they want to aspire is to live that kind of lifestyle. Have 20 cars in their garage, have a big house, fly over the world, and contribute to that. So they need to see these people in the role models, the so-called role models, the government, the celebrities. They need to see these people taking sustainable steps. So that's the only way I feel that you can impact on the younger generation or the people coming. Like, sort of the same thing, looking beyond, like looking 40 or 50 years in front of us. That's the only way we can prepare the earth for the younger generation coming. Because if they don't see us right now doing these things, they will take it like it's just like you telling a 4-year-old to drop a pen where it's meant to be. Then when you're using the pen, you don't drop it back where it's meant to be. And the child is seeing you do that, and you don't expect the child to do it when you don't expect the child to do it when you tell the child to do it. The child won't do it because they can't see you doing it. They need to see us. They need to see the older ones, the celebrities, the government. They need to see the government take those sustainable steps before the children can, or the younger generation can adopt sustainable living or lifestyles. And to add to what Phil said in the beginning, I also agree with Phil. I believe that COVID-19 is a bigger threat because at least I understand what he's talking about when he says in Africa, especially in Nigeria, you see they've closed down everywhere, and people are left. Even the homeless don't know. They don't have nowhere to stay. You look at videos on all over Instagram and social media and YouTube where people trucks are carrying foodstuffs and then they're being attacked by hoodlums or people who are hungry. Go attacking these trucks and pulling down everything that they can pull just to take home and have something to eat. So I feel that COVID-19 is a bigger threat than climate change because it's something we're seeing now, because we have to escape it first before we have to think about the climate change. Because if we don't focus on it now, it will take us, if we've made one step forward, it will take us like 3 steps back if we don't focus on dealing with the threat of COVID-19 right now.
Mm.
Okay, we've got 2 or 3 people who haven't spoken yet. I'm just wondering if they want to say anything.
Where's Akib? Mohammed? Is Mohammed coming in?
Yeah, I'm here. How's everybody doing?
Very good.
Good.
Yeah, I'm just good to see some new faces. Welcome, I'll just throw saying back. I'll give Roxana and Elena speak on what they're quite passionate about. If I was to say whether I was for or against the motion, I can sort of see both sides of the argument. So I don't think it's as clear. The question is constructed in an interesting way, so as to make you sort of think more deeper about this. I think with COVID-19, it can be it is a present threat, and it will go and it will die down, and there will be vaccines. So it's not something that will override climate change. Climate change will always be there. So I think COVID-19 obviously it's a biological threat. It can be weaponized, and there are a lot of conspiracy theories out there of whether the Chinese have sort of weaponized this and send this out. And I think that's not really important. But I think governments need to continue working collectively together. I think if they just sort of go in their own directions with these sort of issues in the future, it doesn't really help anybody. You can see Germany had a low death toll, just as South Korea, and I think there are lessons to be learned after this. So hopefully we won't have such an issue in the future. And in terms of climate change, I can understand just all this talk about education is massively important. I think one thing that's not really discussed when it comes to education and sort of getting people involved is sort of the issues surrounding why people are so desensitized to contributing towards the conversation on climate change. They're worried about their own jobs and their own lives and their own schooling, and I think it all works hand in hand. So I think that's why government should try to better involve people by providing assistance when necessary, and working with the relevant NGOs, getting involved in discussions. I think the government is a massive influence in navigating people and what they do. So I think that's a role that they should be playing. I think that they can do it a bit better. although I don't dispute that there's a lot of work being done at the moment. So just talking there was another point about immediate threats and risks as well. I can understand climate change is a big threat to our existence. So I'm not sure whether the question itself alludes to whether it poses a bigger threat to us now, or whether the question is about the threat being to humanity in the wider picture. Just so I'm not. Maybe Philip can clarify whether you mean climate change is a bigger threat than COVID right now, or whether it's a bigger threat than COVID going forward. Because I think if you phrase a question in a way to say that climate change is a bigger threat or risk, however you want to put it, to us now, I don't think it is. I think it has been put on back burner at the moment because people are dying more proportionally to COVID than climate change. But I think obviously in terms of the longer term, I definitely think climate change is a bigger threat than COVID. Is just going forward due to the fact that COVID will be disposed of in the hopefully in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, so my argument was that the motion talks about threat, and it says that climate change is a bigger threat. My argument was that threat means something that's a risk or is threatening you now, so threatening to kill you or threatening to cause you damage, whereas there is something called a risk, which is a longer term issue. And my argument was that climate change is not killing people today, whereas climate change is. But in fact, Rachel was arguing that climate change is killing people now. So in forest fires, what else did she mention? You mentioned some other things, didn't you?
They're affecting people. It is killing people, but at the same rate as COVID-19.
Well, it's killing people, but I think not like in a direct way. Not as direct as the COVID-19. It's still killing people, but I would say like indirectly, because for a reason or for another one, basically just like there is a deforestation. Someone who's been a farmer has been losing his job, therefore could not provide to his family, and yeah, it's like a direct action on that.
Yeah. Cause effect.
Indeed, absolutely.
But don't you think that the population that we have on this planet is like sometimes or more often or increasingly often right now it's kind of like following with no question whatsoever of what's happening. So if someone says yes, tomorrow you're gonna die because I don't know, you just eat soup, no one is gonna eat soup without even asking why am I not able to eat soup.
Yeah, I think that people they're just lacking a bit of reasoning, because I think there's like everyone is like following trends and more and more and more lately. Yeah. So they don't use their reason, their knowledge, their information, the brain in general, if I may say, to think about what could be the cause, what could be the consequence, and what could be the post consequence. So they're just basically just following the trend, and with all due respect to everyone, I find this extremely stupid.
Yes, it's not only stupid, it's so ignorant that I cannot believe that sometimes you reflect and Earth Day or whatever day is for us to reflect on what's the purpose here. That's why we are here, to find out. And then if you just follow something that has been stated by someone, okay, like it's just that people are like looking for smiles and laughs and all good time, but there is not everything like that. You know what I mean? It's like we tend to like, oh, I'm not gonna look at this video because they kill some cows here, so I don't want to see that, but I'm gonna look at this President Trump bashes everyone because it's fun, right? it is exactly the same like ignorance, and it's not stupidity. I don't wanna kind of like put it out there, but it's just we are like targeting something. We want to make good change, make good positives, but in the same time we are like following all these trends, like you said, with no reason, like a proper reason whatsoever. It's like meaningless.
And without being like really not using that much criticism out of it. So like they I would say they're just not like looking or thinking about why. So like the origin of the problem, from where it's coming from, why it happened, why is it spreading so much right now, and where is gonna lead us, and what will be the consequences of the lead.
Exactly.
And, I mean, there will be always like a bunch of people, basically, super criticism that they're thinking like us, for instance, but others, unfortunately, they won't have that power of thinking or that patience of thinking on the matter, and they're just gonna follow the trends as like sheep people, if I may say.
And I just said, education is the key, isn't it? If you know more, you can decide for yourself. You can be critical in what decisions you are making. So, there is a consequence on anything that you are doing.
Yeah.
Can we go back to Sam's point? Sam said that children need to have have adults showing a good example. That's the way they're going to learn, and they're going to learn to copy what these adults are doing. But in fact, I'm not sure he's right, because if you look at what's been happening over the last 2 or 3 years with Greta Thunberg, she's not following adults' examples. It's her that's been setting the example, criticizing adults and saying you have to change. And adults have been changing as a consequence of what their children are saying. That's happened to her parents. It's happened to other parents of other children that I know, where they've complained about how adults are behaving. And so I think education is important, but I'm not sure that children are going to get adults behaving as they should. I think it's the other way around. I think it's adults will be changed by their children's revelations, and so education, they can learn at school what needs to be done, and then take that lesson home and tell their parents, look, we're throwing all this food away, we're driving when we could be walking, and things like that. Don't you think?
I think that like most of the time, whatever we say to our parents, maybe they're not showing us like to the face, but I think they are deeply interested about it, and deeply they are thinking about it. So I think that's like a good way, just like to sensitize people, like in general, on the matter itself.
But do you think that they've changed their behaviour? I mean, they might be thinking about it.
Well, obviously, we never like to hear things that contradict us or things that they like really hurt us, right? We always love to be in our comfort zone and only hear the good things. Like, yeah, you continue doing that. You're performing good. Well done. Obviously, because like the negative things that are really impacting us, right, and it pushes us to think forward on the matter itself. So. Both ways, I think it's really important, and it's kind of like it's circular. Like kids could impact adults, adults could impact kids, and so on. And like if there is not like merging to strength, so like experienced people that they are basically aware about the problem, but they don't want to hear like properly, and kids that they are learning that in school. So like if we merge the powers, I think it could lead to a better result rather than one taking the stand against the other one.
Yeah, so exactly as you said, it's a circle. If you give the child the opportunity to develop and research and be sure on a subject, be interested on a subject, it can definitely lead to a change. If you don't give him the opportunity, if the education, if they don't have educational programs, if they don't have, so obviously there is a need from help within the school as well, but what we can do at home with the kids, it's also very important as well. So yeah, it's a circle, as Nazi said.
If you don't have the enough education, like at the base, at the bottom of your, like, brain, I don't know how to say that, but if you don't have enough education to kind of get boost and like try and get creative rather than feeling judged by other people, not taking their path, that's when innovation, and that's when like education is doing its job. And like kids always aim to be more solution focused rather than to like talk and not getting anywhere. So I guess, yeah, absolutely a good point here with the education. Everything comes from here.
So we've got Will and we've got Madalena. I don't know if you want to say anything, you two.
I don't know right now. I was just like listening to your opinions, and I somehow like agree with most of them. I really don't know what I could say right now. I'll just keep on listening to you guys, and
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you very much. And we're not saying anything. Okay, so I wonder if we need to think about summarizing the arguments that we've been through and re-proposing our motion, our sides of the motion. So the motion is that this House believes that climate change is a far bigger threat. No, what's the motion? I've lost the
No, COVID-19 is a big threat. Then the climate change, which is a risk.
Well, that was my argument. My argument was
Yeah.
climate change is a longer-term risk. Elena's working now.
Hello, Elena. I missed you.
Miss you. I'm here, next to the San Francisco Bridge. It's okay. I'm sorry for you guys staying at home. Actually, yeah.
Okay. So, can we sum up the arguments? So, Elena, do you want to summarize your argument in favour of the motion?
Let me see if I can. Because I have so many things that kind of came up in my mind because of this amazing conversation.
Yeah, well, you can
very much for everyone.
You can integrate them, can't you, into your speech?
Yes. So overall, I am not 100% sure, and I'm not gonna lie here. I'm gonna be very honest. I'm not 100% sure how COVID-19 is like helping or is damaging like directly the climate change and the climate change actions, but I guess it's not as bad as we think it is. However, okay, sorry, I couldn't see. However, I believe there is a lot of things to do, and then I don't specifically believe that COVID-19 and climate change as like in the same sentence in a way, because there are two different things. They have common like features as global. They are both global, but something like COVID-19 has been here already. The humanity fought with it already. There are some measures in place, or like some risk assessments in place that can help us right now. I don't know where they are. I don't know how or what they did with them or something like that, because this has happened before. So we are not it's clear that if this is gonna happen again, we're not gonna like think about how we're gonna make it better in the future. It doesn't affect us now, so we don't care. I think this is the complete mindset of what's happening right now. Yeah, my line of thoughts is like kind of chaotic right now. I have so many things to say. Education is a very big part of this whole situation. It kind of gives us a better insight of what has happened and how can we think for ourselves when it comes to any particular situation, and how can we make, because the meaning of like this life, in my opinion, is that we have to live here with like, we have to, when we are here, we have to live as responsible people, living a responsible future for our friends, family, or anyone here that like it's exactly the same situation as us. Another point I think I had, yes, when it comes to children again, I guess the implementation of like, what is my final recommendation and final review is that the government or whomever is responsible for educating children, they have to step up, and they have to let us know about how can they implement something that's gonna make a positive difference for the future, and also is gonna kind of save this situation when any pandemic or any virus or any crisis as such is gonna take over, and we're not gonna have anything to do for it, because for the moment we're in house and we are not actually helping. The doctors or the frontline workers are actually helping in resolving this massive situations. It's not like President Trump goes out and says, "Oh, I'm gonna do this." It's just a matter of like words and words. And another recommendation for everyone, like, please be critical in anything that you hear, you do. And it is very important to kind of be sharing your ideas whenever you can, and make sure that you think about a responsible and positive future for everyone. Yes, and that is me.
So, Roxana, your point of view?
So yeah, the point of view against that was supposed to be against against the motion. The main points were that were the way that the government is dealing with the situation, and I think something that wasn't mentioned, but I think it's worth mentioning, so I'll do it in the conclusion. The fact that this issue, the same as climate change, is really impacting on our mental health. So I don't know about the rest of the people, but I've had huge problems in focusing since I've been self-isolating. So it takes me a really long time to try and stay focused on a topic. I get distracted very easily, and I know it's the case on some people as well. But for other people it's even worse, because we have people that are quarantined with children with disabilities. We have people suffering from anxiety. We have people suffering from depression, and this COVID-19 and this quarantine can really impact and have tragic outcomes. To be honest, I've read lots of stories. I think that's a really important point to mention as well. But a part of that, like Elena said, education, just try and be aware. The reality is that it's a threat, and we need to stay as far away as possible from it. But at the same time, we need to not to drift apart, and to remember that before COVID-19 we had other issues on the agenda. So the fact that we're facing a health crisis at the moment doesn't mean it should take our sight on away from what's important, to be honest. And climate change is important.
I'm just gonna join a little bit sorry, the words are going out. I'm just gonna take a little bit of the opinions between Roxana and also Elena, just like a mashup as a conclusion, to be honest. Obviously, I think like those two topics, so climate change and COVID-19, are both related. Like both of them have like an impact sooner or later in our life, because the problem is like we went focusing deeply on the COVID-19 because it was an actual live threat in our lives, so we needed to take action as soon as possible, whilst as the climate change is still happening, we're still witnessing it, but it's like from a day one to a day two, there is not that much impact as the COVID-19 would have from day one to day two. So both of the matters, both of the subjects are worth the focus of everyone. We should not forget that the climate change issue has been already existing before the COVID-19 coming, and this COVID-19 should not attract all our attention in the long term and distract us from other issues that are happening right now. It's like the threat is happening sooner or later. The problems, the consequences are happening sooner or later. One should not forget what are those, and should remain and completely focus on finding solutions on both of them, and just like keep grinding. That's all.
Okay, and can I just say, Rachel talked about the number of deaths from climate change. There was an article in Scientific American in 2009 which said, and this is over 10 years ago, researchers believe that global warming is already responsible for some 150,000 deaths each year around the world, and fear that the number may well double by 2030, even if we start getting serious about emissions reduction today. So that's 150,000. The COVID-19 so far has caused 189,000. So, and that's in what, a month, 2 months? So COVID-19 is causing more deaths than, but anyway, anybody else want to say anything? Because what we're going to do, we're going to have a vote. And so I got a poll that you can vote on, but any final words before we vote?
I'd like to, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, I was just going. I just wanted to say a little bit about. I think we can learn so much from COVID-19 because I think we should have a shut down month globally every year, because we've learned so much from it. By shutting everybody down, the climate change has started improving. Our air has got better, our seas are getting better, our fires are stopping. So, I mean, we've got a lot to learn from this. So if we learn something from this, then we can start helping climate change, which is a long term thing. Yeah.
Mohammed?
Yeah, definitely. I just wanted to raise another point. I think with the climate change, I think one thing that you do see is animals going more and more into sharing habitats with human beings, and obviously with bats with transmitted virus. I think you'll start to see that more and more. The more animals
coming out. Yeah.
Animals mixing with human and all the viruses and diseases that they carry and possess. I think that's another issue we need to think about when casting this vote. I think the idea of the risk assessment should be the most important thing, and we also need to look at. I know it's going to be a topic down the line on one of the debates of humanitarian intervention and how far the global community should act in intervening with what the Chinese do in terms of the way they are eating these animals or killing whales or so. It's just that intervention aspect that we need to think about. That might be part of the risk assessment as well. I think looking at this, all the points raised, I think I'll most likely be siding with Elaine on this one, unfortunately. Sorry, Roxana.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll have a vote. So you should be able to see a poll. Do you agree that climate change is a far bigger threat than COVID-19? Yes or no?
Do we have to be honest, or do we have to? Yes.
That's up to
You have
you.
to be honest.
That's up to you.
Our names are displayed at the end or not?
No.
Is it as democratic as it is or not?
No, it's anonymous.
Okay.
I think it's anonymous anyway.
It's a vote.
Both ways, I'm ready to defend my opinion. So.
Okay, so 6 people have voted.
I'm going to say no, I disagree.
Oh, well done. So it's nearly equal. We've got 9 people. I'm not going to vote, so there's 9 people who are voting, but unfortunately only 7 have voted so far. At the moment, it's yes agreement, unless the other 2 want to vote and change it. No, they don't. Okay, so the motion is carried. Well done, Elena.
It was a very good debate. Really enjoyed it.
So, what I'd like to mention before we go is that this is the first tele event, and we're running. So that was this one. We're running the next debate. Is this House believes that people of sound mind have the right to die when they decide. So you probably know that the United Nations has started this, or created the universal, what they call universal death.
Euthanasia? Euthanasia? Are you talking about euthanasia?
It's euthanasia, and what's the other thing? Something else. Assisted suicide.
Okay.
3. So if you go to our website, which is unacov.uk, and look for events, you'll find it. There are 3 ways that people can die. There's euthanasia, where somebody helps them to die. There's assisted suicide, where people do it themselves, but maybe with the assistance of a machine or something else. And there's palliative sedation, where people are put to sleep, but they're not killed. So there's a bit of information on there. So the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says that everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person, but it doesn't mention that people do not have a right to die. And in fact, in most countries, it's illegal to commit suicide or to try to help somebody else. And that applies to the UK as well, where you can go to prison for up to 14 years for killing yourself, which is a bit, for helping other people. So that is on the 28th of May. So we're going to run a debate on the last, is it a Wednesday? Thursday, I think it's a Thursday of every month. And we've got a few events, a few debates lined up. And one of the things I'd like to ask before we finish is what other subjects do you think we should debate? And then, I'm not sure if you're aware, the United Nations, or the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, has said that this year, 2020, there should be a global debate on the future of the UN. So he wants to know what people consider to be the major problems the world is facing. He wants to know what kind of world we want in 25 years, which will be the centenary, the 100th anniversary of the UN. And what should the UN do to overcome the problems and help us create the world we want? So that conversation is called UN 75. We will talk about that. So this is the 6th of May. So this is the first Wednesday of every month in the afternoon. We're going to have one of these teleconferences every month for the rest of the year. And you will then be able to feed your opinions back to the UN, and they will then use the results of these conversations to form their strategy for the coming year. So that's the next couple of events that we've got, public events. So I just like to spend the last few minutes asking people if they've got any preferences about what kind of conversations, debates. I mean, this was actually more of a conversation than a debate, wasn't it? But what subjects do you think we should debate or discuss in future?
I think we should look at the Sustainable Development Goals. I think that would be the best way to structure it.
Okay.
Because
yeah.
There's 17 of those, and if they are going, if it is going to be on a monthly basis, I think we can pull some of those together and maybe have two or three per month, just leading up to the
That's a good idea.
Poverty and world hunger and
link them together and discuss the topics. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I think we should also talk about war.
Yeah, that's going to be within one of those Sustainable Development Goals.
And this, okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those.
But I mean, war is the whole reason the UN was founded, wasn't it? To stop wars. I think maybe it's such a big topic. It probably deserves. We'll have a look and see what we can do.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's a good idea. Anything else?
I think in terms of next month's debate, is anybody within this group that would like to take the for or against motion? I know myself and Philip did the last debate on nuclear disarmament, and obviously Roxana and Elena have done this month. I know there's a couple of new faces. Is anybody interested in doing leading next month's debate?
So the next month it says this House believes that people of sound mind have the right to die when they decide. No? Okay. Well, we'll see.
Sam, are you thinking about it?
Yeah, I think about it.
Nazir?
Yeah, I'm thinking a bit about like all the arguments / the reasons that I could pull up, but I think it could be like really interesting because I think that we are coming from different backgrounds, different education, obviously, and we do have contradicting opinions on the matter. So I think it would be really, really interesting from like different perspectives to see what Mohammed's opinion could be, or what Roxana's one could be, or like what Mr. Brown's could be. So I think it could be like really interesting. But,
I mean, this idea came out of the previous debate. After the nuclear weapons debate, we then talked about future events, and this was one of the ideas that arose from that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, well, that's wonderful. So we've had an hour and a half of interesting conversation here, and I appreciate it. And if you want to take part in future ones, go to our website unacov.uk and find out what else we do. And I'd like to thank you very much
Thank you for your insights.
Well done, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes. Stay safe and save lives.
Be responsible.
Bye-bye.